Raj Amit, Leslie, and Shazia.
Hello.
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 I hope all of you are doing well, and happy birthday, Shazia.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a very grim topic to talk about today, which is censorship. Something which all three of you have faced in India with your respective films. And the interesting thing about all three of you is that you have faced censorship in very different ways. Um, the the kind of stuff that you have individually faced is very different from one another. Raj's film Unfreedom, it was straight up banned at one point, and for I think if I correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons given for the ban from the censor board was that it would ignite unnatural passion. Am I right?
Yeah, ignite
Okay,
natural passions,
okay.
cause communal disorder. I just like to intervene by saying one thing. Though you say it's a grim topic, I don't like to take it as a grim topic anymore. It's a problem issue for us for sure. But I think we need to kind of get used to fighting it with more sort of not just get serious and bogged down about it. So I don't we're gonna have a serious conversation about it, but I don't think we need to be kind of grim about it. But go ahead.
That's great.
Raj,
Um,
your film still banned, let me ask.
It is officially still banned, but Netflix has taken the film and it is right now on Netflix platform. It's available for people to see on Netflix. So I'll talk about that ban aspect. When we
Okay,
get to that.
interesting.
Yeah.
I was
um,
wondering if it was grimmer for those of us whose films are still banned. But anyway,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes.
Leslie's India's Daughter. The understanding that I have and the memory I have of that movie, that issue in the time it was going to be telecast, is that the major issue that everybody had was that it was going to portray India in a bad light, which is a recurring problem with Indian productions. Somebody just pops up and says they're going to show this or that in bad light. So,
Yeah, it's really interesting that that is your memory of it. Because I would say that is part of the truth of why those who called for the ban called for it. Only a part of the truth. The other part is much to do with human frailty. And I'm actually going to go into that. And I've made up my mind for this program to go into that with an absolute honesty. And it's going to be pretty damn shocking for a lot of people to find out who called for the ban on my film, for it was not the government. But the government's reason, or the PRO of Delhi Police, Rajan Bhagat, who wrote to me the morning after the magistrate had banned the film, gave exactly the same reason as Raj was given, that it would incite disorder. That's the reason given to the magistrate to ban this film, because it would, I suppose in their terms, they thought, well, this would lead to another whole spate of protests. Why would you fear that? Those were pretty much the most beautiful things that happened in India for a very long time.
That's interesting. I'm
Talk
very
in more detail.
excited.
But
Um,
please, let's focus on Shazia's film now.
yeah, Shazia's case is actually the strangest case. It's just plain bizarre to me. So what happened was Shazia's film was produced by was it produced by Anurag Kashyap, or was it produced by Vikas Bal? What was it?
No, it was produced by Anurag Kashyap. Vikas Bell had nothing to do with
Okay,
it.
yeah, that's the fun of it. So Anurag Kashyap was associated with the film production company, and
They had a company called Phantom. Vikas
yeah,
was part of it. So Vikas got Me Too'd during 2018, end of 2018. And that was the time my film was selected for Mumbai Film Festival. And because Anurag had an association with Vikas in the past, they banned my film. Yeah.
it's weird because ultimately what's happening is the filmmaker is being punished, but the idea of the movement is not to punish the filmmaker who has absolutely nothing to do with the what unfolded behind the scenes with an associate of the producer. It's just weird. And Shazia wrote an open letter to the organizers of Mami, which is very good. She makes very logical points. For instance, she brought up the fact that Paul Schrader's movie, First Reformed, it's produced by Harvey Weinstein. That movie and Lars von Trier's movie, he was also accused for sexual violence. Those movies were being screened, but for some reason, Shazia's movie was just straight up banned. So we'll get into all of that. But my first
I just
question,
want to make a quick note. Actually, I would have been very happy if the movie was banned for the content. But
huh,
unfortunately, that didn't happen because from the point I had written the script, it was sort of talking about misogyny in Muslim community. And I thought the film would get banned or restricted or, something would happen against the content of the film, which was completely ignored. And it got stuck in a Me Too movement, actually.
mhm. So I have some questions which are meant for all three of you, and some questions which are meant for individual cases. I'll start with the former first. So, as I said in the beginning, so these are very different forms of censorship, but the question is, how are they similar? So, basically, censorship is the idea of it is you are being asked to not do or see something, you are being stopped from that. So, essentially, what you're doing is you are hiding something, you are being defensive, it is a defensive act. So, my question to all of you is, what is the key similarity between all of your cases, and what do you think is the essence of censorship? What is being defended at every stage of censorship? What is the threat that a film like projects, that you have to protect yourself against a film?
Okay, what is censorship? You have given us, I think, a very cogent, clear, rational explanation of what censorship is. And if I'm honest, as a mother, as a woman, given the horrors that engulf our world, I am in favor of certain kinds of censorship. I want to see pornography banned because it leads our boys to think that women are sexual objects. I want to see greed, hypocrisy, and violence that is gratuitous banned because I want a decent world where human development, people and planet are protected from evil, greedy corporations, for example, and predators of all sorts. So it's a very tricky subject. And let me tell you that the one thing that I deplore about censorship as it is used in the world, and the more repressive a regime you have, the greater the censorship that is exercised in that regime. Censorship is almost a mark, a beacon that tells you that there is something deeply wrong in the actual regime, because censorship is a tool for control by the regime of people's thoughts. And it's not used for the good. It's generally used for the bad. It is a bad thing to guard your image through censorship, because then you never progress. You keep burying your head in the sand and pretending that all is well when all is far from well. One last thing I want to say before I make an attempt to say what I think the three of us have in common, but I think we'll learn more about that as the program unfolds. But the last thing that I want to point out the absurdity of is this. When India's Daughter was banned on the Tuesday before the Sunday, 8th of March, 2015, and as I say, we'll later find out exactly who triggered that ban, shocking as it is. But when it was banned, not long after that ban, and by the way, I have to tell you, NDTV, heroic, Pranoy Roy, my hero, he actually ran a black screen for 1 hour on NDTV for the hour prime time during which that film was to be shown, with a ticker tape running saying, India's Daughter should be playing now. It has been banned by government. India's Daughter should be playing now. Black screen. Amazing, visionary, enlightened human being. Okay. A few weeks later, and that ban, by the way, has never been lifted in 7 years. It didn't, however, stop people within India ripping off, pirating the BBC version of the film, which was shown a few days later, the wrong version of the film. And if you want to discuss that later, if we have time, I'd be happy to. I'll never forgive the BBC for what they did to that film. And that's the version, the UK version, which was the only one the BBC were allowed to touch or change in any way. And, you know, Shazia and Raj will understand when I say, if a broadcasting corporation or someone puts money into a film, and they were the only ones, by the way, who did, after I'd shot the film. I was making this film on my own coin. But when they did eventually put in 40% of the budget, after I'd shot the film, they had the right, as a co-producer, they had the right to make changes to their domestic version only. And they did. Bad changes. And I wrote to the controller and I wrote to the guy who headed up the Strand, and I started off by begging, by pleading, persuading, and then I ended up writing an email that said, now I'm warning you. Okay, that's another thing. Sadly, that's the version that was ripped from the BBC iPlayer. Well, within an hour of it going out on BBC, 60 million Indians had seen the film, the wrong version of the film. That's the result of idiotic censorship, okay? But a few weeks after my film was banned, there was an incident in the Lok Sabha, you may remember, where an MP was sitting in the Lok Sabha with his mobile phone and he was on a pornography site. As a result of which so much shame adhered that the Prime Minister, Modi, had to do something about this. So he banned pornography sites. And I thought, you know what? Good on you. Modi ji, at that time I thought of him as, I thought, I will even sacrifice the ban on my film for this great sacrifice, for this great ban, because this is a good ban, good. Within a couple of weeks, all the men on the internet were screaming out, freedom of speech, how dare you ban our pornography sites? He lifted the ban. I rest my case. What do we have in common? I think we all have in common the fact that spurious and incorrect and inaccurate reasons are given for the bans on our films, whereas in fact the reasons are different.
Before we move to Raj and Shazia about this, I'm just extremely curious about what you just said. So what you're saying is the wrong version of the movie went on BBC, which is what got ripped. I get it. So how was the version wrong? Like what wasn't in it?
In two respects. The biggest thing that was wrong was that at the end of the film, and the film as it is shown in every single country in the world, except India, where it's banned, and the UK, who had the right to do their version of the film. At the end of the film, there is a massive roll of statistics, and it goes on for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And these are statistics from not every country in the world, because it would have gone on for 30 minutes, right? It would have turned into a 1.5 hour film, but from significant countries in the world that some people erroneously might have thought, well, these countries are fairly enlightened as far as rape and women and women's rights is concerned. Countries like UK, US, Canada, Australia, France, Denmark, all these countries had horrific rape statistics named. This, for me, as a filmmaker, was the exclamation mark of this film. Don't you come to the end of this film thinking, Thank God my country is immune from that, because there isn't a country in the world that is immune from patriarchy and its evil, from misogyny and from violence against women and girls. There isn't a single country in the world. And that is what that roll call of statistics did. BBC, in their lack of wisdom and idiocy, took that roll call of statistics off the end of the film. And the reasons they gave were spurious. They said, listen, we are a strand called Storyville. We don't do campaigning films. And I'm saying, if you don't do campaigning films, what the hell are you doing showing this film? You cannot call this film anything other than it is a campaigning film, whichever way you look at it. It's saying, here is a problem. It is evil, it is wrong, and we need to solve it. That is a campaigning film. Finally, they got stuck on this thing of saying to me, we are Storyville. That means we tell specific stories. And this story happened in India, took place in India, and we're not going to apologize for that. It's an Indian story. That was their thinking. Okay. Then the other thing they did, which as a filmmaker broke my heart, was they blurred the faces of many of the characters. So, for example, the juvenile's parents, critically important to look into those eyes and see, what has he come out of? What milieu and context has that child who led a deprived childhood, who could hardly turn out other than he did? Isn't it important to look into his parents' eyes and his sister's eyes and understand where he came from? Well, what their lawyers were timid and told them, can't show those faces. We might be accused of revenge attacks or something. So, you know, legal film lawyers are always timid, are always, frightened. No other country did that. I basically said, listen, if you have a problem with this, no problem. I will remove those scenes. And I had 87 hours of material, for God's sake, which I'd cut down to 1 hour, right? I had plenty of material. I said, don't worry, for your UK version, I'll put in another couple of scenes where we don't see faces, where we don't, whichever characters you don't want, no problem, I'll recut it for you, but do not blur faces of characters in my film, because I would not have included them if you had told me in advance that you were going to blur them. I don't do films with blurred faces. And they had the right to stick to that. So those were the two things they did. So for me, I disown that version of the film. It's not my film.
That's the thing with before moving on to just a small point. The thing with censorship is, as we understand from Leslie's case, is the reasons given to you, they don't make sense. I still can't understand why BBC would go out of its way to blur faces of these people. I just did not understand.
Because I think they had a legal argument that it would be legally unsafe. I suppose their lawyer sat in this, meeting of a libel read is what they call it, right? When lawyers comb through a script, particularly a documentary, and say, this is a dangerous bit, this is a bit that could attract a court case or whatever. Lawyers do that for every film. I suppose they sat there and the lawyers said, wait a minute, let's imagine that because you're showing the faces of the juvenile's parents, there's a reprisal attack and somebody goes in and, shoots them or knifes them or whatever. Wouldn't that be your responsibility as BBC because you allowed their faces to be seen? To which I said, listen, my friends, when I turned up at that village, I turned up with a camera and, small, tiny film crew, but the minute they arrive there, all the villagers come and say, here, there's the house, there's the house. I mean, everybody knew. In fact, let me tell you that in the court transcripts, the court was so inefficient that it actually left the juvenile's name in that. And that is a breach of the law because juveniles have to be protected under Indian law.
I beg to differ from Leslie on one very fundamental thing, right? So, to me, I think the question of censorship is pretty simple. Uh, it is. I come from a place that there is no freedom of speech and expression if it is not absolute, right? I do not convolute that. In my mind, I think at least I am very clear about it. Because once we start this question of can we ban this or can we ban that, or this should be banned and that should not be banned, we're just going to get into a very convoluted conversation around the world. And we'll never find solutions to it. If you look at our forefathers who fought sort of for freedom of speech and freedom of expressions, it always came from a place of saying it is a freedom of speech and expression. We're not talking about going and shooting somebody, right? If I said something and that has an effect, let it have an effect. Because if what I'm saying doesn't have an effect, then what it is? And there is no way we can start figuring about that this offends this person and that does that to that person and this does that. That way you can never speak and you can never express. So if you're giving me a right, a human right, a basic human right of freedom of speech and expression, then I have that right to say what may really offend you, what you may not like, you may totally not like, you may hate it from whatever space. You may see that my work is bad for society. I even say that, right? You may see that my work is if I let's say I made a porn movie, you may see that this is horrible. You are creating bad things in society, and you have right to say that, and you have to right to express that. But you cannot curtail my right of expressing myself. So I at least come from that place. And Leslie, you and I will fight later about it. But let me.
Big time.
Yeah, big time. We'll keep fighting about that. And that's the beauty of it. If we have the freedom of speech and expression, we have freedom to our opinions, and we can talk about it. And we can create a society where two people who totally differ in their opinions can sit on a table and express themselves. I think that's the society we all want, right? And that's why we want to save a freedom of speech and expression. So having said that, I mean, I come from that place, right? That if I am making a film, then it's my film. Then nobody in this world should have a right to ask me, what is the message? Why do you have this in this film? Why you don't have this in film? Can you take this out? This is going to do that, and that's going to do that. No, I'm not interested. If I made the film, you didn't. Who are you? From which space you have an authority to say that I can make this and not that, right? So I come from that place. Now, taking that conversation into, and I'm just going to keep feeding into Leslie's conversation because I think she has raised some very sort of pillars for us in terms of this censorship conversation. So where does that usually happens from? It happens from the place of control. It happens from the place of regime, who at certain point is running the government, who can make certain laws for something to be seen and not being seen, right? I mean, I want to bring a very sort of basic comparison of a First Amendment that exists in America. And I'm not saying America is the sort of forebearer of how the freedom of speech and expression should be, but I'm still just sort of comparing. So the very First Amendment that the Constitution of America says is that you cannot make any law. It tells the government that government cannot make any law that curtails the freedom of speech and expression. And if you come to an Indian Constitution, the Constitution 19(1) gives us the freedom of speech and expression, and 19(2) tells that the government can go ahead and make a law if it is for this and that and blah, 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 and you can sort of create restrictions and this and that. So you can see that already, the basis of our constitution, the way it is written, it is curtailing our freedom of speech. So you can say, you gave me a freedom of speech and expression, but if today Modi wakes up and he say, you know what, I want to create a law, UAPA, and I want to go ahead and put all these journalists in jail because what they are saying is creating public disorder. You know, a government can just wake up any fucking day. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word F words and whatnot because I don't like to censor myself if they're coming from me. So if they wake up one day and they say, well, this is what we want to create this law, so they're going to create that law. So what constitution has provided me? It hasn't. It has ultimately handed it over in the hand of the government to come in and given it the ability to create a law to curtail my freedom. So I'm just comparing two constitutions here. And I guess based on that law, the Indian government 1952 was able to say, let me create the Cinematograph Act. And you look at how partial you are already becoming comparison to cinema as a medium than press and everything else. Because what happens, here is what I'm going to talk about pre-censorship just for a second. What is the biggest difference when it comes to cinema than any other medium? The difference is we as filmmakers are already criminals when we make the film. And I'll explain that why. Because I make a film and then I have to go and stand in a court of law, which is the censor board, and ask them, can I say this? Can I take this out? And what happens in press? If, let's say, NDTV wants to, let's say what Leslee made was not made by Leslie, but made by NDTV, and they were going to put it on their 1 hour show, what would they have done? They would have just shown the film. And then if somebody has a problem, okay, you fight, go to the court and fight for this film is doing this wrong thing or that wrong thing, and then there is a process to that. Fight with NDTV. You know, go to the court of law that this film has problematic elements. That doesn't happen with cinema. Cinema, we can't even show. We go and stand like folded hands in front of a reviewing committee, revising committee who becomes our moral guardian, say this is wrong, that is wrong, this is your message. What absurdity to start with, you know? So, you know, I feel that the act that Indian Censor Board has is already unconstitutional. It's already impartial in terms of different mediums of expression that exist in the country today. So, very, very good example for both Leslie's case and my case. Our film were coming out with a new regime, BJP regime coming in power. There was a very different mindset that was going to sit in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, making decisions of what we will allow, what we would not allow. Even, I don't know if onions and mangoes were banned at that time, but there were many, many things that were banned at that time when that government was coming. And we faced the brunt of it. At the same time, when my film is being shown at the International Film Festival of Kerala, it was the opening film. At the same time, Censor Board is sitting there banning the film. So adding to that what Leslie said is perfectly, it's totally true. The censorship is a way for powers that control a certain society at a certain point of time to decide what is the line we will allow to cross and what we will not, right? So I guess, you know, I mean, that's common for us, right? I think I'll give it to Shazia to talk about it, but just probably want to add one thing, and that okay, one thing we need to keep an eye on, of course, one is the political legal control, right? One is the legal control that happens, that's always in the hand of the politicians who are married to the businesses in many ways. And then there is another kind of censorship, which is economic censorship, right? Which probably in many ways we will see more in Shazia's case. But I'll hand it over to Shazia to talk about what her case was.
I think, my case is different from Leslie's film and Amit's film, but I think when you spoke about what is the essence of censorship, what we're treating as a bunch of individuals are deciding what a supposed audience will accept, and what is right for them to see, what is okay, what will hurt the society, nation. So we are treating this non-existing, we're treating the audience as a homogeneous monolith. In a country of 1.3 billion people, you're saying that there is one kind of person with a certain moral compass, that this is going to be okay for them. I mean, in the country where there are, variety of people with different language, different background, class, caste, all of that, you're saying this is what will work for them, this is what is not okay with them. So that itself, the fundamental idea of censorship is very flawed. And I would also like to say that I believe in absolute freedom, because when you start censoring one kind of, like, this is okay and this is not okay, you can't stop that. Then it becomes an individual, like whoever is in power, like during Leslie's film and Amit's film, BJP is in power, but another, party comes into power and they have a certain idea that they are okay with this, they are not okay with homosexuality, they are not okay with saying anything against the government. Then it becomes a completely different, a few individuals decide how the freedom of expression works in an entire society, right? And that's a basic problem with censorship. And we've seen this, come at the forefront in last few years in India. We've seen it at different levels in different countries. Like China has a very authoritarian censorship system. Like before their script goes into filming, it needs to be approved by the administration. After filming, during filming, after filming, at various stages, they have to get it approved. What is left of freedom of expression then? Nothing, right? Then there is Iran, where people jail.
By the way, Shazia, we also have that when we take location permissions in India.
Yeah,
but they probably don't care to read it properly. So I guess half of that.
Yes,
sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll come to that actually, because my film got involved in that kind of a censorship, local censorship.
Yeah.
So in Iran, if you see, there has been a theocratic government for last 40 years, and there are filmmakers that have gone to jail for making a film just because they speak against the regime. I remember in 2012, Jafar Panahi's film, This Is Not a Film, because he was under a house arrest. He shot a film at home, and the film had to be shipped inside a cake. He put the pen drive in a cake and it shipped to Berlin Film Festival. So that's the kind of world we are living in. So if you stop, and at that time, Ken Loach actually had made a statement that what is happening to Jafar Panahi is because the film community around the world is not coming and speaking out for filmmakers around the world. So you stop something at one place in the world, it carries on everywhere, because that is how power works, right? Power wants to take control of everything. They want to make themselves safe, and that is what is currently with the BJP government in India. They're trying to, like, I remember Heather was made, Leslie Amit, I don't know if you guys are aware of the film Heather, which was made by Vishal Bhardwaj. It is a film that openly spoke about what Indian state was doing in Kashmir. So things have regressed in India in the past few years, and we need to take an action before it's getting worse. I mean, with the flow of OTT now, and with the content that we are seeing, whether it's Patal Lok or Sacred Games, and there is a freedom to do whatever you want to do, but I'm pretty sure that things will get difficult even for the OTT eventually. So yeah, I am completely against all kinds of censorship actually, because if you don't like something, don't watch it. It's as simple as that. There is stuff on the internet or in movies that I don't like. That when the entire conversation around Kabir Singh was happening, and how can a misogynist film, demeaning women can come out, I absolutely dislike that film. But will I go and stop that film director from making another film? No, I don't have any right. That's his freedom of expression, and let him expose himself with whatever content he wants to make. Who am I to go and say, as a creative or as an audience, that no, this does not work, and this, you cannot have, these are the guidelines, and don't do anything beyond. I mean, in India, things are ridiculous, because there was this James Bond film, which there was a very long kiss in the film, and they chopped the kiss because it was a longer kiss. I mean, don't have the kiss then. They chopped the kiss. The kiss was still there, but the duration was shortened. which is ridiculous, and it was cut so badly that I'm sure the editor would have cried after seeing what had happened. And that's why filmmakers like David Fincher, he pulled the girl in the
Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah, Dragon Tattoo, right? He pulled the film. He didn't let it release in India. And directors are going to take a stand, because why should I let a substandard version of my film play in a country because you don't agree with my expression of my art or my storytelling? So in India, things are ridiculous. Like the kind of stuff, like, there are cuss words that offends people. But go out and see on the street, people are cussing, right? And if there is someone whose expression is to portray that realistically, it is going to be there. So how can you curb that freedom and say, oh, you know what, it's offensive to children? So that's why there is a certification process. Don't censor the film. Put a proper strict certification process that this is not allowed for children, or this content can be seen only under guidance of parents. But an adult is an adult. Like, you're allowing people at 18 to vote in the country. They can choose who can run the government. They can marry at 21. Parenting is an extremely difficult task. There is no certification process for who can parent a child. We are living in that world, but you're saying, but if you want to watch an art, we'll tell you what to watch, which is absolutely ridiculous, I feel.
Your answer touched upon a bunch of points that I already had jotted down. I was going to ask about them, but something just unique struck me. So the thing that you were saying, that a few people decide what's going to be shown to the rest of the country. I was thinking it's essentially a political debate which has been around ever since democracy came into being, which is many years ago in ancient Greece. What's better, direct democracy or representational democracy? So essentially, with the certification board, you have selected your political representatives that they are putting into place these people who are going to decide what the country is going to watch. So in a way, the censor board or the CBFC is kind of in your hands because you are voting a party to power, but it doesn't work that way. So just a fun question for the three of you. Would it be like really nice if you could just vote for members of the CBFC? Would that solve things? It's a serious question. Do you like really think that? Or do you want the CBFC to not exist at all?
Just one thing I want to say. No, it's not representative democracy. We don't create a representation to take away basic human rights. The democracy provides some basic human rights to us. We don't create a government to take away democracy itself. All right. So that's bullshit to me, So that's sort of starting point on that. No, there is no voting. In my opinion, censor board, you need to take it like this, and you need to find a garbage can and you need to throw it there. Until that happens, nothing is changing. There is no conversation on Shyam Benegal now going to coming here, review the guidelines, and new guidelines will be given, and this and that and bullshit. All crap. You have the best you can do in today's time when it comes to India, because I think fighting the constitutional thing is a bigger battle. The best thing that you can do in today's time, fight the constitutionality of the Cinematograph Act itself. Because the act itself somewhere, even after government is given the right to make this act, the act itself has many, many legal loopholes. I don't think we have really come together as a community, as a society, as filmmakers to say, look, we can bond together, we can go to the court of law. And I know quite a few people who are still fighting their cases in Supreme Court, right? But I don't know, Amol Palekar case is there right now, Pankaj Bhutalia's case is there right now, and they have gone together to fight about the censor board. But what I'm saying is, you have to fight not from a place how we can revise it. You have to fight it from the place that this needs to go in garbage. Treat us just like press, just like books, just like anything else. Let's fight it in the court of the law. When we have created something, society, you go to the court and you fight it there that I did something wrong in making my film. let's just do that. Let's just try to just bring us at par with every other medium of expression in India. I mean, that's my sort of the first thing I like to say. So go ahead, Leslie, sorry.
Angie Fektia.
Well, it's not that easy fish for us.
But, I have to come in a little circle back to your saying it has to be absolute. Here is the problem with that. We are sitting here, enlightened people. Pretty much, I think on this panel, we couldn't call ourselves enlightened people. Okay, argue with me, doesn't matter if we are or not. We are here privileged as adults to make choices that are not reflexive, that can have a measure of rational thought and critical thinking. Not so our young children. And this is the problem with making freedom of expression absolute, because that suits us. But where are we protecting our children? My great friend Gail Dine is the world expert on pornography. And let me tell you, I've spent hours hearing her, and my soul has been so shocked and offended by what she knows to be true, which is 9-year-old boys are addicted to pornography, and not just pornography, right? Not just a bit of titillation and a bit of breast and a bit of, no, the most violent sexual abuse that you can imagine. That is what they come across now first. Heads being pulled back of girls by their hair and shoved down, right? Disgusting, obscene, evil, despicable abuse of women and girls. Do not tell me that that should be allowed. I'm sorry, it should not be allowed, particularly not when we have a patriarchy that tries to pretend this isn't happening because it suits them down to the ground, that lifts bans on pornography sites because they could give a fuck, right? It's not them. It's not them who have everything at stake, it's us. So I'm sorry, no to absolute. I will not allow somebody to stand up on a podium and say, behead that person, he is Hindu. Behead that person, he is, or behead that person, he is Muslim. I mean, Steve Bannon has just gone out. Are you aware of this? Calling for the beheading of Dr. Fauci and the head of the CIA. Steve Bannon has just gone out publicly on the internet, that evil, vile platform that requires regulation, because our children are absolutely prey to it. They are caught in its net. We cannot ignore this. We do not have that luxury. So I say yes, censorship board, Fektia in the bin immediately, but create a moral compass board. Create one that has to do with the legal profession, that is less subject to the vagaries of, you know, changing winds of political ideology and political interests, and we want to, you know, stifle Kashmir, we want to keep our enmity going with Pakistan, we want to, you know, get rid of the ability of politicians to decide, but do have a moral compass. Do get a group of lawyers together to say, what are we protecting here? Only what can lead to the breach of law. Law, not law and order, not cause protest, but actual law. Is it a law that nobody shall be murdered? Yes. Well, then do not allow anything that calls for that. Get the moral compass right. Start teaching our children from the age of 3, when we can get hold of them in our nurturing arms. Teach them social emotional learning, teach them gender equality, teach them racial equality. You know, this is where we're failing, and that is why we're having these appalling buffeted winds from here to there, with no morality, with no responsibility.
May I address that? I would like to address that. Look, Leslie, in my opinion, whenever we have done most evil, it has always been in the name of asking, let's do this in the name of protecting our children, protecting our women. And at one point of time in history when we were not independent, protecting India, protecting these people who don't know how to rule themselves. That was Gandhi who said that, so most bad in world is done in name of protecting somebody who we somehow feel have more enlightened, rational, right to do that. What you were just talking reminds me of the censor board that Unfreedom went to. My own reviewing committee said that to me, look, we are enlightened people. We understand your film. But a common man on street would not understand your film. We have to protect them from the public disorder that this can create. This is exactly the language that was provided by them. So one hand, when you say that we have to have some kind of a moral compass, who decides what that moral compass is? Who are those enlightened people? We're going to fall back into the same trap of whoever going to come to rule us is going to come back to that decision-making process. And I'll address the question of law and all that also. And when you say law should decide, yes, they are deciding the law. They are changing the law the moment they come in the government. So I strongly believe that's, certain things have to be basic human rights. On the question of when you say that the children has to be protected, yes, there has to be a system. We're not saying, you start making pornography and put it in front of the children, there are, and again, I'll say two things about children. When you say protect our 3-year-old children and show them what's the right way. And Shazia mentioned that there should be, I totally agree, there should be a parenting certificate. Otherwise people should not allowed to give birth. Unless you have that parenting certificate, you have a knowledge to how to teach your children what they should expose at what time and what not. And there should be definitely a mechanism to say that these things are not for children viewing. There should be a certification process that we make people aware that what is this film. You can have a certificate that say this is a horrible film. If you want to go that far as a government and say, look, this is the worst film we have ever seen in life, and this is the don't nobody watches it. Fine, but don't take away my right to take it out. So agreed that there has to be that, but that's the responsibility of the parents. And there are so many children in a country like ours, and you have examples in your own film, India's Daughter. These people who went out and did these acts, I don't know if it was really coming from a place of them watching pornography, or it was coming from a place from them not having access to release their sexual repressions.
No, it came from us programming them. That's where it came from. This has to be said. It came from us programming them. We are part responsible for those rapes. We, society, and socio-cultural thinking.
Totally agree. We all are responsible in any and many ways that the society will live in, right? No doubts on that, right? But coming back to say that you can't become a moral compass and ask the government to not be the moral compass. It just doesn't work. It's a cycle that will not ever solve the problem, right? So going back.
We're not asking the government to be the moral compass. Actually,
they are. And they will.
I'm not.
But what I'm saying is,
I created a program for young children from the age of 3 to 6 that co-constructs pro-social neuropathways in the developing brain. I've created it with neuroscientists, with psychologists, with educators and experts in social and emotional learning and moral compass. Nothing to do with censor boards or governments or twisted human beings who didn't get the right social emotional learning education. So it can be done. It is being done in 16 countries in 6 continents. It can be done.
So Leslie, on that point, I am with you on that. You should be allowed to make as many films to say that pornography is bad for our society. And I should be allowed to make as many porn films that I want to make. I think that's where we need to be.
Your porn films are regulated. That is the problem. The internet is not regulated because big business has interests in keeping it unregulated. And that to me is immoral and unsustainable and is harming our people and our home, the earth. That's it.
Sorry, can I butt in?
Yes, Shazia.
Leslie, actually, if you see, I have been doing some case studies on Korean films from the time the Korean New Wave started in the late 90s. And that's also the time when the country started, having a more democratic government at the center. And if you see the way the New Wave started, Korean cinema is very famous for its violent content. By violent, I mean they raise questions about human need for violence. And you cannot understand that unless you show violence. So a lot of Korean films by directors like Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook and Lee Chang-dong, it's all about how violence affects human mind. So we need to find a solution. That's the content of the cinema, and that's why their content is not censored as much as, say, their neighboring country like China or like Indian content.
It has a moral compass. That's what you're saying. It is contextualizing the violence. It is not there to titillate the appetite of men who want to sling guns across them, as we're seeing in the States right now. Vigilantes.
But it doesn't have a basic good versus evil moral compass. It has a quest to go deeper into the human psyche and why someone becomes violent. Like your film did actually, why someone becomes a rapist, right? Like exactly. I wanted to hear them. And that is what Korean cinema has been doing. But it has been doing that with a very linear, censorship. If the moment it goes that, oh, you can't show this, you can't show that, you can't show that, then you can't have a discussion on the kind of issues that the society faces.
Yes, but I'm not. I think you misunderstand. I am saying regulation, for example. Who sees this? I'm talking about age limits. I'm talking about regulating the internet, which actually is completely free and open to children, completely.
Yeah, I understand about the internet regulation.
I'm not talking about keeping a censorship in place. I mean, I'm the last person in the world to be talking about that.
I'm talking about cinema. I'm not talking about internet regulation at all. That is completely different, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that I want to move on to. But before that, extremely interesting points made by all three, and I'm in agreement with all three, actually. But I just want to note down, I've noted down some of the basic things that you guys are in disagreement with, and some of the things that I'm in disagreement with. I would like to revisit these points in the end of the conversation, if you have something to add. So one of the issues that has come up is whether there should be regulation or not, simple. And one of the solution that Raj Amit proposes is like as he said, that I can make as many porn films as I want, I or whoever, but at the same time, films which advocate for the banning of pornography or pornography is bad, they can be made at the same time. So it's a free market concept. There won't be any regulation, and that is a way of thought. And what Leslie is coming up with is there should be someone who's an authority figure with reasonable enlightenment, who should decide what the moral compass is, what the law is, and so on and so forth. But the problem with this line of argument, and there's also a problem with Rajamit's line of argument, the problem with Leslie's line of argument is what the moral compass is or what the law should be is always open to interpretation. That's A. And B, we are Leslie's making a point with the assumption that humans are very nice and they won't. Raj actually is making this point that humans are very nice and won't abuse
No, I'm not
human
saying
rights.
humans are very nice. I'm not saying at all.
No, no, that's just a way of.
I don't know. I don't know who humans are. I mean, I don't have that much knowledge to understand human
No, no.
beings.
What I was trying to get at is you are operating with the assumption that human rights won't be abused if given full freedom to create.
I don't care. What I'm saying is human rights are essential to human life, and
Okay.
they need to stay. That's all. I mean, they will be abused. They are being abused today. They were abused yesterday. They will be always abused. I don't know when you will find a kind of a society where human rights won't be abused. But
10 years' time, I'll show you one. A whole country.
But taking away a human right in name of human right will be abused is a kind of a very sort of convoluted idea.
Yes. And one of the things that Shazia brought about South Korean films actually is that I disagree with it. So what she said was that these films have violence, which we all know that, but they have a moral compass, and that's not always the case because there's this movie I
No,
saw
I
the
didn't say anything about moral compass because I think moral compass is a very subjective idea of how it works in something which is very, moral for you can be completely immoral for me. So that's
Tell
the
me
first thing that I have
Tell me
said.
something. A very important question.
Yeah.
Is it right or wrong to take the life of another human being?
That's a legal matter. That's not a censorship matter.
No.
No, I'll come to you.
Of moral compass.
No, Leslie.
It's a matter of moral compass. Is it right or wrong? Just tell me that.
Our constitution,
Sometimes right and sometimes wrong.
No. Listen to me. Listen to
Very
me.
important.
But I'm trying to. You are getting away from the censorship, and you're getting into the question of criminality. So let me. And you raise this.
I'm talking about moral compass, and is moral compass possible to have, to create? That's what I'm talking about. Moral compass. I
think we all have our sense of right and wrong. I think we all have our moral compasses. We must. Who are we to say a filmmaker is going to come and make a film and he doesn't have a moral compass and I do have a moral compass?
I'm not talking about filmmakers. I'm talking about us and moral compass. Is it right or wrong?
Can I give an example of a film which I think all of us have seen?
Is it right or wrong to kill a human being? I'm only asking.
I'll answer that. Leslie, let me answer you that. Everyone has seen Parasite here. I mean, a South Korean film that everyone has seen, right? The recent film. So when we see the journey of the poor family and we see them conning the rich family throughout the film, we are somewhere in agreement with the director that they are doing this out of their need. So in the end of the film, when the poor father kills the rich guy, Song Kang-ho's character kills the rich guy, somewhere we still empathize with the person. And that is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's right to kill a person. I'm saying look at the journey of the person. And that's what films, when they don't get censored, we are trying to delve into the human psychology. That's the point I was trying to make, that we have to see the point of view of the wrong people. That, people who are killing, we know that the person who has died is a victim. It's wrong to take someone's life. But the person who's taking that person's life, the criminal in the eyes of law, or the person who's wrong from our moral compass, we are looking into that person's journey and we are trying to understand why he does what he does and get an empathy.
It's very dangerous to go down that slippery slope.
I think it's human. I think it's human to understand and empathize with such a character.
Just to add to Shazia, the direction you're going with it, right, is the first of all, why am I obligated to make a film about some kind of right and wrong? There is experimental cinema that's not even storytelling.
No one's obligating you.
Let's say there are films out there which are pure sexual pleasures, and we know cinema has always been a medium of senses, right? It has a role.
What's wrong with sexual pleasure? The taboo on it in India is what's wrong.
Exactly. And why do you think that taboo exists there? Because
the patriarchy, my friend.
I think it's the same
That's why I
patriarchy.
keep wanting to talk about life, and you keep wanting to talk about filmmakers and cinema. And it's no coincidence, by the way, that I am now an ex-filmmaker. Okay, I'm not ever again in my life going to make another film. India's Daughter was my last film because
Don't say that.
no, 100% true, 100% true. Because what it has taught me personally is that films can create awareness, but they do not lead to change. What we need is urgent and critical change. So I have moved my filmmaking heart, which was there because of my love of people. That's all I used to make films for and about. I've moved that into the real world, and I'm now educating children between the ages of 3 and 6. So
Right.
that is why we're coming at things from very different, it's important to know. That is why, to me, frankly, censorship in film, very important topic. But actually censorship in life, much more important topic and much more dangerous. Children don't wander into the cinema for the most part and sit and watch films. You've already got an inbuilt protective mechanism there. Show and do whatever you want in a cinema, okay? Unless it's calling for the beheading of a human being, the rape of a human being, unless it's calling for those things, because there are absolutes in life that have to be taken care of. That's what we have the law for. Otherwise, the law is an ass. And the law is an ass to a large degree because culture trumps law.
So let me just, please allow me to say just two things.
Yeah, I'm on mute now. I'm on mute.
No, just allow me to say two things on two very important points that you raise. One, when you say about a Steve Bannon calling for people's beheading, or a film is calling for somebody's beheading, there are Supreme Court legal judgments in today's date out there that look, if somebody has called for a criminal act, first of all, if it's a generic statement, even Supreme Court says you cannot call it a freedom of speech and expression. You cannot curb somebody's freedom of speech and expression. It has to be as direct as lighting a bomb with a matchstick. These are actual words from the Supreme Court ruling, I'm saying. So I agree with you. If we have that kind of criminal freedom of speech and expression, but Supreme Court takes extreme care when they write it like that, right? They say that your speech has to be very clearly exactly like that somebody was standing here with a gun or something, and you actually pretty much put the trick, not like you made a film or you wrote a book or something like that, right? So one, I agree with you that if a speech goes that far, and it's for courts to decide if a speech has gone that far, right? It's a matter of criminal act for me. It's not a question of censorship. So that's one. Second, when you say, and it's great. India's Daughter is a great example. Looking at these people who committed this heinous act is a great example to look at them. Even if they wouldn't have seen cinema or films, the society that they were living in, the ideas, the aspirations of what they want, aspirations of the things they wanted to express, the sexual repression at its height that was there in them, sort of tied with all other humongous sort of mindset problems. But that was one of sort of just the key element. So but usually what has happened in case of cinema, always, we have taken that and thrown the problem on cinema and censored it. Because you know what? Because it is that kind of medium that you get your political mileage by doing that, right? So, I mean, once again, just coming back to say a very simple thing, in my opinion, at least in case of India, bring cinema at par with press, with books and everything. Let us make our films. Go fight in court against our films, not tell us to fight in court for what we are making. I think that's just sort of the basic minimum starting point. I like to say and rest my case in that. Yeah.
Okay, I want to move on to the matter or issue, whatever you call it, of sex and gender, and how this was a part of the censorship issue with all three of your films. But before that, one quick thing which I wanted to talk about in regard to South Korean films. Just a small thing, then we'll move on to the sex and gender thing. So, Shazia, you said that you were researching on South Korean films, violence in South Korean films. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So, what you were saying was that in these films, the violence, there's a kind of reasoning given to the violence that occurs. There's a
It's not
kind
a
of
reasoning, it's the
okay.
journey of the character and why somebody becomes violent, and understanding or empathizing with somebody. Like in Leslie's film, through her film, we understand that why the entire society makes a rapist, and it is not just that particular individual. And because I'm strongly against the idea of death sentence in rape cases, because I don't think that's a solution. And that's why we need to see, Leslie's film to understand, because we need to hear rapists. The thing is, we are not giving a chance for them to speak up. Until we don't speak, till we don't let them speak, we don't know what's going on. We don't know why rapists rape, right? You have to know the other side. You have to know the narrative. And that is what Korean films do. They show it from the point of view of the perpetrator. And they make us understand that the society is responsible. If someone is a killer, the society is also equally responsible. And I'm not saying like a blatant bad film. I'm giving example of some films like Parasite or Lee Chang-dong's Burning. We see that a person's having class struggle throughout the film. I don't know if you guys are aware of Burning, but it spoke about this guy who becomes violent at the end. And that is what the Korean film, ideology has been like over the past couple of decades. That's what the Korean New Wave is about, that it tries to understand the human psyche of why someone does what they do. Whether that's violent act, whether that's regressing, say, in terms of gender, it could be anything, but it's understanding human mind. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and cinema allows that to happen. And that is something that should not be censored. And compared to, if you see Chinese censorship system, they have the whole good versus evil. Like if the story has to have a good versus, very defined good versus evil theme in the film, because they see the world like that one person is good, one person is bad, that's it. So I'm saying that that's a very narrow outlook to humanity. It has to be more deeper than that.
Okay. So all your films, Unfreedom, Bebaak, and India's Daughter, they have something, actually a lot, to do with body, sex and gender, and how violence is involved. In case of Shazia's film, psychological violence, and in the case of the other two films, physical and psychological violence. So how all these things are intertwined. My question to all three of you is, what about in respect to censorship of films or any kind of art actually, what about sex and gender is scary to any authority figure? And the second part of that question is, and something that Leslie said, murder is legally wrong, obviously, but of course it's also morally wrong. I mean, it's not right to kill somebody. But violence doesn't attract the kind of opposition from authority figures as sex and gender does. Issues of sex and gender in films. So, what is it about these issues that kind of scares authority figures? They start calling films that creates unnatural passions and things like that.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to make my intervention incredibly brief, because for me, gender comes into it. And it's all about what is so threatening to the authorities about this. The most fundamental threat there is power, that their power will be taken away. Their power, the minute they accord equality to women, they have problems. Their patriarchy is threatened. Chile, just last week, the country of Chile, voted 79% of the country, which means a lot of men voted for this, that no legislation shall be made without at least 50% women involved in that process. Iceland, good few years ago, 3-4 decades ago, maybe even 4, all the women in Iceland went on strike for 1 day. 1 day. They walked out of their homes, they left the children inside the homes, they walked out of their jobs as secretaries and bank tellers. The country collapsed. Collapsed. They won their fight for equal pay, I think it was the fight there. That's what they're frightened of. That's why gender is such a massive issue for regimes that are patriarchal.
Yeah, I totally agree with Leslie that in one large way, it is a gender issue, right? It's the most people who are in power, who have run this world, they are men. And I like to say that most of them are crazy men. They are not, they cannot buy the idea that women are equal and better in many cases, maybe most cases. I mean, we have seen in this current pandemic, which rulers around the world, which prime ministers have done a better job in terms of running their countries. It's kind of very obvious to everybody who has run the nations better. It is a huge threat for half of the population, and then the population that's running that half of the men population, to say that how can we have a world in which it is just possible suddenly that just women are everywhere and they are controlling things, and I mean, just how crazy it is that in 2020 we still don't have an equal pay for equal work. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like 70 years ago, 60 years ago, we were looking at the women didn't have right to vote. I mean, what are we talking about? So it is obvious. It is very obvious, blatantly clear to the world that the rulers are men, and they want to control the narrative and stories in a way that women cannot hold.
And the money, because they are
of course,
these patriarchs.
It all boils down to sort of the financial equality, right? Because then that gives them the freedom to do things. So 100%, that's one major thing here. I think second is also, it is also absolutely essential, I think, for the powers to sort of control the sexuality of the whole population, right? To kind of, if we just kind of, be free and happy about fucking, I think it's somehow an issue. I don't know what the fuck is the issue, but I think it's somehow the issue. It's just like we don't consider sex can be art or sex can be pleasure. It is always goes back to sort of the religious morality of procreation and sex somehow to be controlled. And again, I think it is very tied with gender. Of course, I think it is very, very tied with that. But that is the problem. So that's always the biggest issue. Otherwise, if we are bombing cars in the mainstream Hollywood, Bollywood films, that's just not a problem. We're chopping people's heads. That's kind of okay. I think we can. So I think that's everybody is okay with. I mean, you look at the censorship guidelines and you will be totally surprised. The first guideline says a violence that can, I don't know what, blah blah blah, should not be allowed. Oh my goodness! Every Bollywood film that you give a certificate, a use certificate, starts with blowing up a car. I mean, what are you even talking about? It's just there's no sense to these guidelines. So yeah, I mean, I rest my case on that.
I want to move to before I
Actually,
move to
I'll take off from. Sorry,
Shazia has a comment.
can I take off from what Amit was saying? Basically, the censorship actually says that in no way women can be shown regressed or demeaned against. But you see, like half of the mainstream Bollywood films and see how women are treated. The kind of jokes on them, the kind of the character representation, and the kind of like see how Muslims are treated in Indian films. There is absolutely no presence of Dalits in Indian films. Muslims are stereotyped as like one typical thing, which is a misrepresentation of an entire community and a very large community. So what it says in the guidelines and the actual putting that on film, it's completely two different things. Then there is no one really regulating that what it says is that really happening. So that's a major flaw in the way the system works anyway. And I would like to give example of what earlier Amit had said, that censorship begins for in our films in this country, and especially in the political times that we live in, much before even the film is complete and it goes to the censor. Like my film was touching upon misogyny in Islam, and it was like in India, if you're doing anything you're making a film that points a finger at religion, it's an extremely difficult part to take, because I wanted to shoot in all these Muslim areas, and nowhere they don't allow women to step in the mosque and stuff like that. So it became really complicated for us. Even the location that we finally shot in, they wanted us to show the script to them. Like imagine a director have to, or like the team, the production has to submit a script for the location people to approve the. So we had like a fake script for the location everywhere we shot. And it was completely different from what our film was trying to say, just for us to allow, like just for us to, get the permission to shoot. So once it starts at a level where the government is running the whole system at a very confused level, it trickles down to the whole system, right?
Let me just add one line to what Shazia just said, because I think that's very critical for us to know, because censorship is always about, at the end of the day, self-censorship. Yes. It is always about that. Why a Raj Amit Kumar film or a Leslee film or Shazia's film is being banned? That you're telling them and they're telling the rest of the society that censor yourself already, not to make cinema of this kind anymore, because you're going to lose all kind of money, all kind of time in trying to make these kind of films. So it creates a cultural environment. It sends a message out there that filmmakers need to censor themselves before even deciding what films they want to make, or how much they're going to show, how far they're going to go with it. So I just wanted to make that point.
I have a question for Shazia. So the kind of censorship that you faced actually was censorship from a private body and instead of a government or authority. And their problem was, as I said, quite strange. But one of the things that was being said during Me Too was that some collateral damage is okay. And your film, unfortunately, became that collateral damage. So my question to you is twofold. Number one, what do you make of this reasoning that because the purpose of Me Too is morally correct, collateral damage is fine, and very good and important movie like Bebaak can it's okay to censor it, not show it. What do you make of this logic? And my second question is that after this, now that the movie is on streaming on Movie India, you wrote that open letter. I think it was out on First Post. After that, did you have any communication from the film festival people? Like, did they apologize? Did they reach out to you? What did they say?
I mean, the way the film got banned, I would just say that the Me Too movement in India happened like most of the things happen in India. It was very arbitrary, very thoughtless, very random, the way things happened. It was not like there was some actual impact in the way it happened in Hollywood. But in Bollywood, it just went haywire. And my film was like one of and there were 6 films that were banned. My film was one of that. And I don't agree with the whole collateral damage because a lot of while I got a lot of internet support and support from the fraternity, but there were a lot of people who said, oh, in the larger scheme of things, look at the bigger side, and it's yours as just one film, how does it matter? No, but what I'm trying to say matters to me, it matters to my crew. We were making a short film for almost a year. It matters. It was a very important topic that we were talking about misogyny, we were talking about patriarchy, and you say Me Too movement is for the women, and you shut down an entire conversation, the most important conversation about women, in support of Me Too movement. So who is the movement for? So I think it was absolutely, it did not work for us. Their logic, their reasoning did not work for us. And like I said, they had films from other bigger director like Lars von, and they could not ban their film because Lars von is a big European director and I am a newcomer Indian director, so they were under some restrictions of not banning other big films, but they put all the smaller films and unknown directors under the bus because of that, to make a statement. It was very performative, actually. You want to take action against a movement, like with a movement, take a solid action. Don't do performative actions, which has absolutely no result. And that's the reason no other film festival followed that. I think it will not be right for me to say that whether the festival connected to me or not, because that is something that happened, much later. But I, of course, don't have a grudge against them. The film got released in US. It did really well at the festivals, and I'm really glad and happy with the whole journey that it has had. So, but yeah, I think being a film being a collateral damage in a movement like that is absolutely unfair to the filmmakers, to the crew, to everyone. And you also have to see what kind of film it is, right? The film was talking about freedom of young girls, and you're saying Me Too movement and then putting a film like that with absolutely no logic, like by association, every film is going to be associated with some person, some predator, right? So how many films will you ban and where will you stop?
Right. So
yeah, please
okay.
let me follow on from that, because we have now found something so strongly in common between Shazia and the banning of her film and me and the banning of my film. First, let me say, I couldn't agree more, Shazia, with what you've said. The arrogance of a movement to dare to say there will be some collateral damage, that their movement, which, by the way, I think is a wholly erroneous movement. It's based on a fundamental disrespect for law and process.
Yes.
And that does no favors to women. So I am not in agreement with the Me Too movement, although I pride myself on being a feminist, an activist, and a big fighter for women's rights, okay? But look at what happened in the case of India's Daughter. What's your perception? Who do you think banned the film?
I really thought the government did.
You think the government did? Okay. Raj, who did you think banned India's Daughter?
Well, as far as I don't know the details, but as far as it was the court that banned the film.
Let me tell you what happened, and I'm sorry to be shocking, be shocking you. We have to look at the truth. We have to always be honest and truthful, okay? The film was banned because a group of Indian feminists went to that magistrate and asked for the film to be banned. And I'm going to name those of them who I know were a part of that, okay? Indira Jai Singh, sorry to shock you, my friends. We are talking about the Gloria Steinams of India, the ultimate, most respected, most amazing feminists who fight for women. Excuse me. In this case, they fought against women, and they must be named and they must be shamed. Indira Jai Singh, Vrinda Grover, Kavita Krishnan, Urvashi Bhuttaya, and Dr. Devki Jain. I only know of those 5. There were others.
Leslie, what
Yeah.
was the reasoning? Why did
Now,
the
this is what I want to tell you, because I want to give you the details so that you know this is not another Me Too baseless allegation. This comes from the confession of one of them, okay? And she named the others, okay. Or if she didn't name them, I then found out because I was then alerted to the fact that NDTV held a private screening, which they were asked to show them the film. I was in Delhi. I had no idea this was happening, or I would have been in that room. But sadly, whoever showed them the film and acceded to their demands, these 20 or so Indian feminists, is how Dr. Devki Jain told me it went. Here's what happened. About 6 months after the film was banned, I found myself on a panel exactly like this one. We were discussing censorship in India. And we were particularly discussing the censorship of India's daughter. On this panel were myself, 2 others, and Dr. Devki Jain, whom I hadn't known anything about until that moment. I knew Kavita Krishnan had a problem with the film, and it shocked me greatly because she took part in the film. She was in the film, right? But I remember the first time I met her in the flesh, having contacted her on email, etc., she asked me a very strange question. She said, "How long have you been in India making this film?" And I said, "Gosh, about 6 months now, of course, you know, researching and also filming the parents and the, you know, about 6 months." She said, "And you've only now reached out to me." I said, "Kavita, I'm so sorry. Of course, you know," no, she said, "Don't you know who I am?" I said, no, of course I do. Please forgive me. And then I backpedaled like crazy, begging for her forgiveness. And I felt really bad. But you know, as filmmakers, what happens. You get in there, you dive in, you're up to there. You've got problems left, right, and center every second of every day. And you go to invite the people you want in the film at the moment at which the time has come, right? Okay, huge apologies. And we got back onto an even keel, and I felt we were good and she'd forgiven me. And I did feel that, you know, if I'd had things better organized, I would have reached out to her earlier. But I was, you know, making the film on my own money. It was kick, bollock and scramble, as we call it here in the UK. And, you know, that was it. But after the ban, the morning after the ban, I found myself on a radio interview. And my opposite number in this interview, when I say opposite number, the interviewer had chosen 2 points of view, mine and another's. And who was that other? Kavita Krishnan. I was totally shocked. I thought, she's against the film. What is she saying? She's against the film. She was using every excuse she could try to come up with, right? Peeling the layers of the onion, I got rid of all of them. She said, this is a contempt of court because the Supreme Court will still have to hear this case. I said, Kavita, please don't worry about contempt of court. I've actually employed 7 lawyers and had 7 opinions from Supreme Court judges, you know, retired High Court judges, lawyers whose specialty this is. And I'm a very seasoned filmmaker. Don't worry. I understand film and law and releases and, you know, what is dangerous and not. And I can tell you categorically, the Supreme Court judges, who are not children after all, and by the way, who were also around when the Indian media laid into these rapists, calling them monsters, and the juvenile was the worst monster, and all of that was going on while the court was sitting, let alone in between sessions. And I said, you know, it's very clear. Supreme Court judges are not allowed to take into consideration anything that was not canvassed in the Sessions Court. That is a fact, okay? So whatever is in this film anyway, they can't take into consideration. And anyway, I have been very responsible in making this film, and I had new evidence that would make your hair stand on end, but I sat on it and I've never released it, and I never will, because it is not my job to be judge and jury. But I have evidence that would be so, if I were looking for sensationalism, that's the first thing I would have done, I promise you, okay? Putting that aside, She then goes to what I understand is the heart of her problem. She says to me, you come in here, a foreigner, knowing nothing about our feminist movement in India and what I and the people's, whatever it's called, this movement she runs. And I say that deliberately, by the way, and facetiously, because I have forgotten, and why would I remember when she has behaved as she has? She says, you come in here, know nothing about and the work we've done and I just said, look, Kavita, do me a favor, take your own life savings, go and spend 2.5 years of your life making a film about your movement. I, for one, would love to see it, but my film is not that film. I have no responsibility to be an ambassador for you or to tell the public all that you've done. That's not what this film is about. And then we came to her last argument, which was, you treated me as a prop in this film. To which I just had to, profusely apologize and say, listen, I shot 87 hours of interviews and material. I had to bring this down to 1 hour. Of course, you only ended up being 5, 7 minutes, however, 3 minutes, however long it was, right? It's an inevitability of the process of filmmaking. That was the end of it. I thought, okay, bit of ego, how sad, how pathetic. But I just closed that chapter. 6 months later, I'm sitting on this panel at Oxford University, more than 200 Oxford students listening to this panel. And I hear Dr. Jevki Jayan at the other end of the panel saying, of course, now with a mic, of course, now the 20 or so of us Indian feminists who went to NDTV to see I thought, what the hell? They went to see the film. I had no idea. How did they, what? I was in total shock, right? And then she goes on to say, now we regret having called for the ban. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what went through me? I mean, this was like being blown up by a bomb. My jaw hit the floor. I started screaming. I went completely hysterical. And I said, how dare you call yourself feminists? You're not feminists. You're working against women, not for them. How dare you? And I'm screaming my head off. The students in the hall, of course, are like, complete, you could hear a pin drop, right? Total shock, electricity going through. The next thing is the temperature has risen because I've started screaming. And she then shouts back at me. And she says, you want to know why we're so angry with you. I'll tell you why we're so angry with you. And I just go, tell me why you're so angry with me, right? It's hilarious cat fighting between us two. And then she says exactly this, because you chose the 8th of March. And the blood drained from my head. And I turned to the students and I think I need to explain to them what's going on here, because they're going to think this is a Kafkaesque, futuristic hell horror show, right? And I said to them, listen, the only thing this woman can be referring to is that the 8th of March is International Women's Day. And indeed, I chose the 8th of March as the date on which I persuaded 7 countries to simultaneously broadcast the film, despite the fact that the BBC had the right to the first premiere and Sweden had the right to the second premiere, all that jockeying for position in television company contracts. I persuaded 7 of them to show this film at exactly the same time in honor of International Women's Day, and to show that they all own the problem, that this is not an India-centric problem. All these countries have the problem, and they're joining hands and saying, we jointly have to do something about this. That was the plan, scuppered, of course, by the ban. So then 6 countries were doing it. And then I turned on her and I said, of course I chose the 8th of March. To which she answered word for word this: you knew how many events we had planned on that day. This is what we have come to as a human species, that we've become unwitting hypocrites, that we know not what we do, because we're so embroiled in ego and territorialism and acquisitiveness. How the hell can they, or Barkadat, or anyone for that matter, tell me that I'm a gori who should keep out of their affairs? Come on, grow up. Put nice big grown-up pants on. This is a universal problem right across the globe. I'm a woman, I've been raped, I have every right to go into any country I choose and look at the situation in that country. And this situation is the same in every country. Why did I go to India? Not because of the rape, my friends, okay? I went to India because of the protests, because I fell in love with those protesters. And that is the spirit of India that should triumph. Not, don't tell me my country's bad. Do you rape, your country's bad, full stop. Sorry, I'm so angry about this. And this is built up in me for the last 7 years. And this is the first time I've really gone all out and said, this is how it is. Human frailty is what kills us every time.
Just give me 10 seconds because I really have to rush.
Okay.
So
Okay.
thank you, all of you. This was a great session. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing that. That was quite an eye-opener. Thanks, Amit. Thank you so much, Dave. I really enjoyed it. Sorry, I really have to leave.
No, that's okay.
But
Happy birthday, Shazia, and wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so much.
fantastic.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.
आपसे मिलके बहुत खुश हुई.
Same here. मुझे भी बहुत खुशी हुई.
मेरा दिल भी कितना पागल है.
Bye.
Bye.
I guess just to quickly contextualize what Leslie said and what Shazia was saying earlier, it is like, we have to kind of keep in mind what happens is when we are fighting for one kind of human right, we cannot lose our eyes on other human rights that exist around us. I think that sort of very, very essential aspect. The same thing happened with me when I showed Unfreedom to some LGBT organizations, and they loved the film, but they took a position that, look, we cannot come behind this film because this somehow takes away hope from the LGBT community. It doesn't show a hopeful picture for them. And on one hand, I understood it, and that's fine. But I think that's a civil society conversation, right? That's a civil society conversation. What Leslie is also saying, there are power struggles at every different place, and people will choose to support you, not support you, and whatnot, right? I mean, and that's going to keep happening. I don't know when we'll get rid of that. But coming back to the censorship issue, just last thing to say on civil society, I think everybody who's fighting for some kind of rights need to just be aware that others are fighting also some other rights, right? As much as my fight is important for what I'm trying to do, as much as the other person's fight is important.
And if we join hands, then we get double the impact. That's the point. This isn't about ego and territory.
Right. Yeah, but that's a civil society problem, and we have that problem.
Raj, it is a civil society problem. I couldn't agree more, 100%, and well called. However, what's interesting is, would my film have been banned if those women had not gone to that court?
No, totally understood. Totally understood. Some people are like some. It's a complex system that how power works in our society, right? Which nodes are meeting which, how they are entrenched and how something, comes to be banned. But I think at the most basic level is that there is a law that exists that allows for that to happen, right? I mean, so why LGBT people fought for so long to abolish 377? Because okay, other problems, it's not that you take away that law and the problem of homosexuals and LGBT community are gone from India, but it is still very, very essential to fight that law and get that out of the way. Yeah. So I'll just call for just one last thing. Take the censor board somehow, let's all get together, as many as we can, and say, can we somehow throw this thing in garbage? Can we fight can we call for that fight? Can we all get together towards that fight? I mean,
I'm happy to be on that team. I'm all in, and I will temper my temper.
you please, and because I'm going to make porn in future. I mean, how will we kind of collaborate, but we'll see. We'll get to that. What you will define porn, probably I won't, but that's a different thing. I mean, but yeah, let's try to curb censorship from our legal system. I think that's most important. Sorry, I end. Let's end this.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Whitebirdtrails, for this amazing discussion.
Thank you so much. I could feel every emotion when you guys were speaking out your heart, and my heart goes with that. I mean, I could feel it to some extent. But yeah, but I just hope, yeah, whatever you said, that the censorship board goes to the dustbin. But yeah, till then, thank you so much.
ये मेरा सौभाग्य है राज अमित कुमार मुझे तुमसे बहुत प्यार है
अच्छा मुझे भी आपसे बहुत प्यार है we will connect after this and we'll talk more. I think this is a fight that needs to be fought. Thank you guys.
Ghosh, you too.
Thank you everybody. Bye.
Good to meet you all. Bye.